Okay, this is going to be another classic Ring of Honor review. This is going to be Final Battle 2004. It's December, Final Battle month, so I'm going to see how many classic Final Battles we could get to before the end of the month, but I wanted to start with this amazing show, Final Battle 2004. Now, you know, the interesting thing about this show is, you know, it's missing a lot of talent. You know, there's really a lot of guys missing from it. That's why I think Final Battle 2004 is kind of classified as a one-match show. Basically, you're buying this show for one match, one moment, the greatest moment in Ring of Honor history. By far, I would say this is my favorite, and without a doubt, the most meaningful and most important title change ever in pro wrestling. It was just so well done. So everyone needs to check this show out if you're a pro wrestling fan, and trust me, by the end of the show, you will see what I'm talking about. It still brings tears to my eye, the finish and the emotion of the crowd. It was just so well done. So let me just get that out of the way first. But yeah, I mean, the show as a whole, I mean, it's missing a lot. And right off the top of my head, it's missing Colt Cabana, Naja McGuinness, the Briscoes. There's probably a lot of other guys that are missing from this show. So you know, the undercard is not good here. I would say that this show really doesn't pick up until, you know, the main event, to be 100% honest with you here. But let's get down to let's just kind of speed through this undercard. First match tonight, you had Jimmy Jacobs taking on Trent Acid. I mean, it's not an awful way to start off the show. I mean, Jacobs and Trent Acid have a lot of potential. They're both capable of putting on compelling hardcore matches, and both of them have had their moments in the history of the company here. But at the time, it was just kind of a dull way to open up the show. CM Punk and Gabe on commentary, they were kind of making fun of Trent Acid for looking like he just busted out of a homeless shelter. And, you know, after the match was over, Jacobs got the victory and Trent Acid actually quit. So yeah, not a spectacular way to start off the show. Kind of starts off the show with a negative vibe, but let's just move on from there. We have Deranged teaming up with Lacey. Remember, the original Lacey's Angels featured a lot of the Special K members. So you had Deranged teaming up with Lacey to take on Angel Dust and Becky Bayless. If you remember, Becky Bayless, eventually she became like a ROH reporter backstage. I think Becky Bayless is really good looking. I just never realized how thick she was. And in this match, I totally forgot she used to wrestle. I think she was part of the wrestling school, but eventually she became a reporter. I like her, though. I think she has a great personality. I always thought she was really good looking. But, you know, Lacey ended up to go on to conquer bigger and better things. Deranged and Angel Dust, eventually as the year went on, they started to become more important members of the roster. So we just move on from there. Next up, we had Homicide taking on Josh Daniels here. And, kind of a weird victory for Homicide. Homicide's like a street thug, but in this match, he was actually forced to do some technical wrestling, and then eventually he busted out a key lock to win this match by submission. It's just funny on commentary here. When Homicide put him in the submission, Gabe is like, Homicide putting on some sort of hold. And then Punk is like so sarcastic on commentary, and then so he goes like, that would actually be a key lock. Like, he was kind of like the way he said, he was kind of insulting Gabe, like, you know, you should really know what that is. And so I thought that was pretty funny. But it's just funny to see Homicide, someone that really relies on brawling and his speed and brute force, to actually win a match by submission there. Yeah, so Josh Daniels, I mean, I remember this guy being in a lot of the Ted Petty Invitationals. I think he was even in the TPI 2004 tournament. But you don't really, he just kind of had a generic look for ROH. That's why I don't think he really accomplished a lot. So Homicide kind of gets a generic victory there. So like I said, guys, this undercard, I'm having a tough time even getting through it. There just really wasn't a lot to speak about. But we have John Walters taking on Jimmy Rave for the ROH Pure Championship. Kind of a weird match here. John Walters, if I were to parallel his career to anyone in WWE, I'd say he's kind of like the Steve Blackman of ROH. Great look, great body, great, great, he's a good wrestler, man. He's not a bad athlete at all. John Walters definitely had his moments, but on the mic, he was kind of like a buzz killer. You just don't want to give him a mic. He actually ended up beating Jimmy Rave here. Rave actually ran out of rope break, so it was a pretty innovative submission while he had Jimmy Rave tied up on the ropes. And after the match was over, Prince Nana, if you remember Prince Nana and Jimmy Rave, the part of the embassy. So Nana actually offers John Walters money to join the embassy. And this is kind of one of the most... I mean, John Walters basically sells out and joins the embassy, but it just came off so generic and just so unpassionate that it just felt kind of weird. I don't think John Walters survived after this. I think he was pretty much done a couple months later. I don't remember him being at all involved in Jimmy Rave, CM Punk, and Jimmy Rave AJ Styles feuds going into 2005 at all. But the sellout just came off very, very generic. Just basically just got no heat. But I mean, it's just one of those things that proves that in ROH too, you had to have some sort of a look or personality to kind of thrive. You had to be more than just a generic, good technical wrestler, and that's something that I think a lot of people missed the boat on. Guys like Spinnernet back in the day. So next up we have John Walter. No, we already talked about that match. We have Dan Maff and BJ Whitmer taking on the Carnage crew, the Fight with the Honor match. This is kind of like the whole blow off to the whole Ricky Steamboat, Mick Foley thing. Maff and Whitmer were sided with Steamboat as like the pure wrestlers, the guys who wanted to carry on traditional wrestling. The Carnage crew was like Mick Foley, glorified stuntmen wrestling, hardcore garbage ECW type of wrestling. So this is the Fight with the Honor, and it was good, man. It was really good. BJ Whitmer actually won the match with an exploder, but this featured very, very bloody suplexes through tables, a whole bunch of foreign weapons here. I really got bloody, but it was good though. It had a lot of intensity. The crowd was into it. Everything worked out well. That led to a great confrontation between Steamboat and Foley, one of the number of confrontations that they've had in 2004. And this is one of the best ones, I think. And this kind of settled the score. Ricky Steamboat actually got a job with the WWE right before the show. He was going to go on to become an agent. So Foley said, Foley and Punk on commentary said, the WWE needs a lot of help. And it's funny because Foley was kind of shooting on the fans, because they were, a lot of them in the crowd was like, WWE sucks, and Foley was like, you know what, Ricky, like all these fans say the WWE sucks, but guess what? They all watch it. And that's one of the interesting things. It's like that I've noticed about Ring of Honor over the years. It's like you always heard all this commotion and conversations about the WWE sucking, and they were, whenever you go to a ROH show back in the day, people would always talk about how bad TNA was or how bad WWE was, but Foley kind of threw it in their face, like, all you guys watch it, like, what are you guys really doing to make the product better? So Foley started name dropping. Back in 2004, it's like, when you look back at 2004 compared to today's product, like, it was so good back then. But, Foley was kind of pointing out all the flaws that the company had, name dropping guys like Mark Jindrak, Snitsky, Luther Reigns. So he was kind of name dropping a lot of the guys that sucked. And then he would name drop Chris Benoit and then Eddie Guerrero, and fans would start cheering. And then he name dropped Triple H. And then there was a huge fuck Triple H chant. And then Steamboat was funny because he starts talking to the crowds like they're little kids. He's like, you guys know what that is? That's called heat. Like, he's basically sounded like he's talking to a bunch of 12-year-olds there. But it was a good confrontation. Samoa Joe came out. Definitely, this is one of the better Foley Steamboat confrontations if you haven't seen it. It was really good. I mean, there's a lot I could touch on there, even about Samoa Joe and Foley. Foley actually, shot on Joe about how for everything that you've done in ROH, if you don't get to the WWE, you're always going to be like 3 steps below me on the totem pole. So I thought that was a great promo there. And so we move on from there. We have Jay Lethal taking on Prince Nana's weapon of mass destruction. Number 2, kind of a generic win for Jay Lethal, kind of set the tone for the great year he would have in 2005. But I'm just going to move on from here. Next up, we have Steve Corino with another long ass, like 10-minute entrance, teaming up with CM Punk to take on Generation Next of Roderick Strong and Alex Shelley. Not a serious match at all. Punk came out with Tracy Brooks. Yeah, Tracy Brooks is really hot. She really hot, really nice hair, really hot brunette with very tan with breast implants. And it's funny, like as she was coming to the ring, this one guy goes like, "Oh, I'm gonna be so fucking in love tonight," and then Punk gives him a look like. The look Punk gave him was like, it was just like, yeah, man, that's pretty funny. And so that was an interesting thing before the match, but the match as a whole just didn't have a serious vibe. Punk actually makes Alex Shelley tap out with the Anaconda Vice. The match just never got going. I mean, there were some nice exchanges between Punk and Strong. I'm not a big fan of Corino. This was the phase of Corino just getting really out of shape. Corino was always great on the mic, but at this time he would make these special appearances, and a lot of more of his priorities were in 0-1 in Japan. To be completely honest with you, but what this match does was it softened up the show for the main event, and it kind of gave Aries fuel to do what he did with Shelley tapping out to the Anaconda Vice so nonchalantly. It just perfectly sets up the next segment. So let's get to the important part here. So Strong and Shelley are in the ring, and then Austin Aries comes out and kind of calls out Shelley for tapping out and for being a hypocrite, because Shelley said at Midnight Express reunion that we're all in this thing together. Generation Next is our priority. But Aries called out Shelley for being a hypocrite, for spending a lot of his time in TNA or not showing up to ROH shows in favor of showing up to TNA. So, this Final Battle 2004 show, one of the underrated things about the show is that it really kind of sparked that divide between TNA and ROH, with ROH kind of, acting like we're above TNA. And I think, this whole turn really kind of symbolized that, with Austin Aries kicking Alex Shelley out of Generation Next basically because of prioritizing TNA over Generation Next. And so Aries called him out. He said, I'm going to give you two choices. Either you step down or you get beat down. Aries actually gives him a mic. Shelley is about to speak, and before he could even talk, Aries just slaps Shelley in the face, and Roderick looks like he's about to break it up, and then all of a sudden Roderick gives Shelley a backbreaker out of nowhere. So bam, Alex Shelley kicked out of Generation Next. It's great booking too, because Shelley was the leader of Generation Next. He was the mouthpiece. At first, Aries was kind of like a Chris Benoit. He kind of did all his talking in the ring, didn't say much, but slowly but surely, as Aries started to gain more popularity and more buzz and more power, winning survival, or, going the distance in Survival of the Fittest with Danielson, all these things kind of, gave Aries more and more confidence, to the point where he had enough confidence to beat Samoa Joe for the ROH World Title. So, yeah, that was a great turn. And talk about momentum here. This really gave Aries a shot of momentum going into the main event. And I definitely think it helped. I don't think the main event would have been as effective if you didn't do this. It's not a heel turn, but the turning of Alex Shelley, or turning on Alex Shelley in this segment right here. So next up, we have Loki versus Bryan Danielson, the rematch from the 2002 match of the year. Oh, by the way, this is something I've always wanted to do. I wanted to do a in-depth breakdown of the top 20, maybe top 25 matches in every single year in ROH history, a music video countdown. So I got 2002 out of the way. And yeah, man. So if you haven't seen it yet, go back in time and check out some of the top 20 matches of Ring of Honor in 2002. It definitely had such a old school feel to it. But yeah, but this is the rematch here. We finally get to see it on Final Battle 2004. I'm going to say this is one of the most disappointing matches in Final Battle history. I mean, you would think with Loki and Bryan Danielson advertised on the marquee here that it'd be something special. Now, this is one of the reasons why I like to do these videos. I think, all of you guys can learn something from pro wrestling, and that's why I love pro wrestling too. It teaches you life experiences. I mean, there's people out there that will probably be mind blown by how much you could actually learn from pro wrestling. But look at it like this. Look at how successful Samoa Joe and Bryan Danielson and AJ Styles, and all these guys have come through Ring of Honor. Look at the success they've achieved. And look at someone like Loki, who's really set the tone for the company in 2002. But it doesn't go beyond that, though. You know, it always, and you know, and here's my proof to this. You know, CM Punk and Gabe on commentary, they were legitimately taking cheap shots at low keys. Punk even said on commentary, he said, Loki thinks Ring of Honor needs him, but it's the other way around. Loki needs Ring of Honor. So, you know, you wouldn't say that unless it was really true. And you know, countless times on commentary, Gabe has said that Loki's a pain in the ass to work for. Now, the overall theme was that, you know, Loki didn't want to do any more jobs. You know, he was getting a lot. He had a lot of success in ROH in 2002. He was getting booked in Japan constantly. At this time, he was actually working for Pro Wrestling Noah, so he was really picky about who he faced and who he would lose to. So one of the things that came out leading up to Final Battle 2004 was that it was going to be Samoa Joe versus Loki for the ROH World Title. Eventually, the word got out that Loki didn't want to do the job to Joe, so. The show before this, All-Star Extravaganza 2, that's where Punk and Joe 3 actually took place. Loki actually faced Austin Aries for a #1 contender match. Apparently because Loki didn't want to do the job to Aries, didn't want to do the job to Joe, it was decided that match should just go to a 20-minute no finish, and then Aries actually ended up getting the title shot by default. So that's how the story went there. So Loki didn't want to do the job, and against Bryan Danielson here, you saw Loki, you know, in his heel, he turned heel back in the summertime at a show called Reborn Again. Yeah, I think that was the show. It was called Reborn Again. And Loki wrestled this match like such an asshole. I mean, he really wrestled this match like he was better than everyone else. Like the fame and the his name value had gotten the best of him here. And, you know, he really kind of took the fans out of it. You know, probably the most memorable spot in the match was Bryan Danielson doing a surfboard. He did his surfboard and put it in and kind of modified it and put Loki in a guillotine reverse headlock while he had him in a surfboard. That was really cool. But that's really as good as it got here, man. The match just didn't live up to expectations. They were brawling in the crowd, and then Homicide and the Rottweilers came out, attacked Danielson. It turned into a big schmoz. And then Loki got back into the ring and forced the referee, and he did basically like a Chris Benoit type of chokehold to the ref. You know, kind of like a stranglehold, kind of like the same thing that Danielson did and that got him fired from NXT. It was kind of like the same thing going on there, where Loki demanded the ref declare him the winner. So the match is really disappointing, though. You know, if you see this match on the card, you're going to be very disappointed. You know, it just wasn't what you would have expected. And yeah, I mean, it was just, but you know, at the same time, it really built Loki's heel character and made him that much more hated. And it kind of escalated the tension that Bryan Danielson and Homicide would have. You know, you guys know they would have a best out of 5 series as the year went on. All right, so let me get to the main event. We have Samoa Joe taking on Austin Aries for the ROH World Title. Yeah, man, the match is incredible. Aries had a different strategy here. You know, Punk in his matches, he was a little bit more methodical. He really kind of, applied more of a headlock and really tried to take Joe out of his game by just, you know, being relentless with the headlock and, just kind of countering Joe's offense. But Aries here came out like a bull. He came out like a missile, didn't want to waste any time. Aries capitalized on all of Samoa Joe's mistakes, especially with the Ole Ole kick. That's when Aries busted out the heat-seeking missile as CM Punk kind of birthed the name of that move right there. And yeah, man, it just, you know, Joe was doing everything to put Aries away, hitting him with island drivers. Just didn't work. You could see Joe get more and more frustrated as the match went on. Turning point in the match, you know, Aries actually hit a 450. Joe kicked out of it, but turning point was when Joe tried to put on the muscle buster off the top rope. Aries actually counters that into a crucifix bomb. And then, man, the last like 4 or 5 moves of this match, you can just hear every single shot. Every single time Aries made contact, it was like, oh, the crowd was, this is the best crowd reaction I've ever heard for a finish ever. I mean, it just came off that good. Basically, after the crucifix bomb, Aries just full body shots Joe hard as hell with shoulder blocks, 2 shoulder blocks in a row. Then he hits him with a a boot to the face where, Joe just took a fucking shot right there. That was full contact. Then he gets him up for the brainbuster. To see that Samoan go up for the brainbuster, it was like, holy shit, how did he get him up? Joe was like twice his size. And then Aries hits the 450, flawlessly executed there. The 1-2-3 count was incredible. I've never heard a crowd that invested in a 3 count ever. I mean, it just came off that good. Like if you were to do, in retrospect, I wish I had, like when I did a story about pro wrestling back in the day for the newscast, I would have used this. This is the ending that I would have used. This is definitely by far, if you want to show anybody what pro wrestling is about, you show them like the last sequence of this match. And like I said, guys, this is definitely the most meaningful championship victory ever. It's one of the things I think WWE and even boxing to a degree. If you guys saw the movie Creed 2, you remember one of the things he was trying to convince, Michael B. One of the guys that set up the fight, he was trying to convince Michael B. Jordan. Even though you have the championship, there's 77 world champions. How many of them do you think people remember? So it just kind of goes in that line of like. For a lot of times the champion isn't remembered, and it's very, very difficult to make the title mean something. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with the WWE right now. It's like there's really not a lot of reasons to tune in if the championship doesn't mean anything. But what Ring of Honor did right here with the ROH World Title, they just really meant and give Loki credit. I know I kind of crapped on Loki. For not, for being like an asshole and not wanting to do jobs. The point I was trying to make about Loki is that, if you just do the right thing, like Bryan, Danielson, AJ Styles, a lot of these guys, they have good reputations, like Samoa Joe. My point was, if you just do the right thing, not worried about, bitching over jobs, everything will fall into place. And, my point was, look at where Loki is right now and look at where a guy like Bryan Danielson is right now. Like, everything fell into place. And, Danielson never had a reputation of being bitchy or picking about jobs. So yeah, give Loki credit for setting the tone for how important the belt was. But bottom line is the belt never really took off until Samoa Joe made it what it was. And it took a while. And give CM Punk credit too. But, eventually Joe took that belt up to the point where you just thought no one could beat it from it. It just felt like it really meant something. Most meaningful belt in North America. They went above and beyond to make this belt so important. They waited for the right guy. And Austin Aries is definitely the right guy. This is a refreshing, out of the box decision here to give Aries the belt, and beyond, like Aries wasn't supposed to get this spot. It was supposed to be low key. I'm sure Joe was probably supposed to retain over low key, but because Aries started building up momentum, it was just kind of one of those things where, Aries could use the belt. This is a huge opportunity to make a huge star. Joe pretty much went as far as he can go, and give Joe credit. Like, even though Joe loses the title here, I love what Joe did, because he didn't, obviously he's not, obviously Ring of Honor wasn't like where the WWE was at the time. So it's hard to compare it to Bret Hart in 1996, where a guy leaves after he loses the belt. That's one of the things you can kind of, sympathize with Shawn Michaels about, like he wanted Bret to be more of a supporting player, but Bret just kind of left and, he started renegotiating his contract and all that bullshit. So, that's one thing you could kind of sympathize with Shawn Michaels about. But, what Samoa Joe did here, I know this is the Indies, but he played a supporting role, and I think that really helps out the company when the guy that was the champion goes down the card and tries to elevate other guys, and then you can have Aries kind of, take Joe's spot, and therefore you just have better rounded shows. And it's just, what ROH did with the championship here. There's very few companies that have done it. I don't think ECW really ever produced a title victory this emotional. Maybe you could argue the Terry Funk win, but to me, I don't think you can compare either two. I don't even think WCW did a title change this meaningful. But yeah, man, that's one of the videos I want to do down the road. The top 10 most meaningful title victories. The title change here, it just meant something. It just felt like Samoa Joe lost a piece of himself, and then even Bryan Danielson's lost to Homicide, which I'll talk about hopefully with my brother at the end of the month when we review Final Battle 2006. Like when Danielson lost that belt, the way he handed over the belt to Homicide, it just felt like he was handing over him a piece of his soul, a piece of his body. And so Aries wins the belt. Fans are chanting match of the year. Thank you, Joe. Aries was just hot as hell after this match was over. He was just so over. He got himself so over to the point where it was just deafening. And this is supposed to be a heel. This is supposed to be someone that is a full blown out heel. But ironically, he ended up being the most over guy in the company that night. So yeah, just a tremendous night. Final Battle 2004. This main event will just live on forever, and it's something. It's still carries that emotion. The match never gets old. I'm not going to say it's the greatest match in ROH history. I'm not going to say this is even anywhere near one of the best shows in ROH history. But it's the moment, the title change, the execution of the finish. It just came off so well, and so that's pretty much it, guys. Final Battle 2005 will be next, and I'll see you later. All right.